hollow tubes in the body are like air pressure things, so that when we push on it, it pushes, like a machine, a primitive machine, on to the, wow, I think that's crazy, because these are, what, nerves. When did they invent the blood flow, right? That's Harvey, and that's later. So they don't know that you actually got blood flow going on in the circulation system. And the nerves, how do those work, right? They haven't invented electricity yet, right? So that's Ben Franklin, with the key, etc., right? And that's a crazy story, but as far as I understand it, that's really true. And in fact, he captured it in a glass, right? Somehow, I don't know.
He tried to.
Yeah.
He tried to key to the sort of like Absalom obliterated it.
Big keys. I've seen pictures of them. Yeah. But so, when Hobbes is describing the physical nature of the body, he's got really like gears and tubes and it's really like like a movable puppet of some kind. By the way, Descartes did make his own puppet. He had a daughter named Francine who died when she was 5 years old, and he was so sad he made a replacement.
Wow.
That was so realistic it scared people to death, and so they attacked it and killed it.
I thought he was about to stuff her dead body. That also happens a lot in history.
That was like Chucky. They thought it was like Chucky, right? That little doll that,
Yeah. I was Chucky for Halloween.
No.
Although I'm brown, so like it wasn't like the best costume.
Oh, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh.
Because Chucky's like not brown.
I blame the 1980s teenagers.
You're lighter than me.
Oh, I am? Oh, you got a nice tan.
I'm NC-15.
What does that mean?
I got a DNA thing that said I was like NC-15 or something.
No
or
kidding.
16.
Well, and yeah, we look, well, except for the beard.
What's N15 and N16?
It's like a gene. It's like a gene that you have.
To know your skin shade?
Yeah.
Yes,
Why don't they use that in makeup?
they do.
They do?
They do.
I think Rihanna uses it.
Yeah, Fenty.
In Fenty, yeah.
Oh.
It's not my fault. I'm just saying, Yeah, I think it's cool. Officially, I don't believe in races except for the human race. Because they still don't give me any credit for being part Neanderthal. I'm 1.2% Neanderthal. You are too?
No, I'm like 0.9%.
Oh,
Next
well.
thing you know, y'all figure out y'all relatives.
You're much closer, as I pointed out the last time I mentioned it. Yeah.
Much closer, like, to each other, or really?
To Neanderthal. I mean, you wouldn't have more than 2%. That seems to be the maximum. But if you look at what a Neanderthal today, they think.
Neanderthals are. Is he Neanderthal? Well,
We're all Neanderthals at heart.
What comes after
No.
Neanderthal?
Homo sapien.
Homo sapien.
So this is the picture that I've seen. It's supposed to have been developed using DNA to figure out what a Neanderthal might look like. And the argument is that as people moved from Africa through the Middle East up into Europe, the Neanderthals were living there, and they didn't wipe out the Neanderthals. They, over 40,000 plus years, intermarried with the Neanderthals, so that as the Neanderthals gradually disappeared, more and more people had more and more of the genes from Neanderthals. And so if you identify as Caucasian, that's because your Neanderthal genes are giving you that lack of melanin. apparently. And there's some other characteristics too, like the way you deal with salt and some other things. None of this is my fault. I'm just reading it. Pardon?
Wait, what?
I don't know, I haven't heard anything about that. Which would be weird. My wife hates cilantro and I think it's like, when do I eat it? I guess it's in my food, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think cilantro has something to do with like food recalls. Like if you're closer to them, then you don't like cilantro.
No kidding.
I was gonna say.
Well,
Well,
that's just, we gotta get back to work here, actually. And this is really important, because Hobbes is going to move on from the nature of the machine, and our imagination is a result of all these motions bouncing around, dreams including, because they don't stop. Thank you, Galileo, unless there's something that puts drag on the motion, and what puts drag on the ideas bouncing around in the brain, as far as Hobbes is concerned, you've got all these motions, and these motions are thoughts. And notice that they're directly influenced by the objects that cause the motions to begin with, right? So he's an empiricist. Now notice he's not going to be officially a British empiricist yet, because one of his followers, who we'll be doing next, is that right? No, we'll do Spinoza next, then John Locke. But we'll be doing John Locke, and John Locke is the official first British empiricist because he introduces the problem of empiricism, and Hobbes doesn't. But clearly Hobbes is thinking all of our knowledge is coming in through our senses, reading these motions. These motions are bouncing around, and that's our thoughts and our dreams and so on and so forth, right? And what motivates this machine that's me is I'm attracted to pleasure, things that make me feel good, and I dislike pain. So, ouch, I move away from that. Ooh, this feels nice. I move towards that. Right? Pizza. Right? No? No pizza.
No pizza.
Some people like pizza. Other people don't even like the largest pizza in the universe. But, that's neither here nor there. So there's this attraction, it's what makes us feel good, makes us move in that direction. What makes us feel pain, we avoid, right? Avoiding pain. And life is difficult. And in fact, as far as he says, in the state of nature, people have talked about nature. I mean, there's the law of nature according to Thomas Aquinas. So it's not new, but the way he treats it is certainly different, because he says in the state of nature, a hypothetical state of nature, which is a state where there's no government, everybody has the right to everything. The only trouble is, that means that if you've got something that I like, I have as much of a right to kill you and take it, because that's what I would like. So there's no restrictions on who has rights in the state of nature. And as a result, you end up with this dog-eat-dog world, where life is nasty, brutish. I can never remember the whole line here. Nasty, brutish, short. There's more to it. But as a result, life is nasty, brutish, short. Basically, I don't know where the whole line might be. In Paris, in England, Civil War period, later life, etc. So I don't see where that line might be. But in any case, what do? We form a contract. He calls them a social contract. So this is, if you've ever heard the expression social contract philosophy, political philosophy, social contract, this is, as far as I know, the origins of social contract thinking. And that is that we form a contract with others that if you protect me while I'm sleeping, then I'll protect you while you're sleeping. They say, okay, agreed. And I lay down and go to sleep, and he kills me. Because it's dumb for me to trust him just on a handshake. What I need is an authority that will beat the crap out of him if he kills me, or worse, right? And so what I need is an authority who will rule over our contract and enforce it. And so I can have groups, I can have gangs, a bunch of gangs, right? And they all fight one another. And how do you solve that problem? You end up with a unified agreement between the gangs, and you create a larger government that is, ruling all of the gangs, and then so on and so forth. Eventually, you get to the point where you now have a nation state, and he doesn't take it any further than that, because they're just beginning to have nation states in the way that we think of them today. And the monarch, he thinks, is the best kind of a ruler. Remember, he's an Aristotelian too. I haven't mentioned that, but he's clearly following Aristotle. And Aristotle gives us three basic types of government. You can have the rule of one, you can have the rule of a few, and you can have the rule of all. And Aristotle said that the rule of one has a good side and a bad side. The good side is a absolute monarch, or a monarch who has the best interests of everyone at heart, right? So that's the best kind. The worst kind, though, would be a tyrant who doesn't have the interests of everybody at heart, right? The second kind of government for Aristotle is the few. So you have the rule of the few. Remember, he thought that the best, the aristoi, was the best kind of government, and the aristoi would give you an aristocratic, right? So the rule of the best. So somehow you figure out who the best are in your society, and you have a group of them. And the interesting thing about that is, if you have a group, you're not going to have the problem of having that really intelligent ruler get old and senile. And if you think about it, if you're familiar with Shakespeare's play King Lear, which is considered a tragedy, but officially for Aristotle it's not a tragedy, because remember, a tragedy is where the person does everything that's right and still gets, crucified in the end, basically. Well, in King Lear is going senile and does everything wrong. And everything all happens, everybody dies except one person who ends up taking over, the kingdom, etc. All of his children end up dying, etc. King Lear, horrible, situation. And it's all really a result of having a ruler who's getting old and senile, and there's no way of getting rid of him. Because he's an absolute monarch till the end, even if he's going nuts, right? So what do you do in that case? So King Lear did an interesting play along those lines. Well, with an aristocratic government, you don't have that problem, because you have a group of people, and as one or more of them start going crazy, the others say, time for George to go sit on a different throne.
His special throne.
A special throne where he can play with the blue water, that kind of thing, right? And George is fine with that, because he's going senile. And then you replace him with, let's pick up, this person. Yes.
So would that be closest to like a board for any sort of company? Like you have these chief executives, rise, and they're now the board.
Yeah, well, the way I understand it, it would be more like the entire board is the authority, as opposed to having a monarch. But what has always happened is, in human culture, it seems like you have a board, but then you have a CEO.
So it's a board with complete equal share then?
Yeah, well, you end up feeling like you have to have an executive, because they execute the law, right? And the executive has to be able to work quickly. What happens when we end up with a bunch of folks all arguing over what should we do?
Then it takes a long time.
It takes a long time. We might not even decide what we're going to do. Even 9 people can't decide whether or not we ought to remove the debt, of all these people or not. You get the idea, right? So you need